President Trump tweeted an attack against NASCAR's only full-time black driver Monday. His comments prompted one of the president's top congressional allies to push back. Natalie Brand has the latest from the White House.
President Trump set off another debate over NASCAR and Confederate imagery after tweeting Monday that NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace should apologize after an FBI investigation concluded that a noose found in his team's garage last month was not a hate crime. The president said that and NASCAR's flag decision hurt ratings, prompting a Fox Sports executive to respond that viewership of the sport is up.
The intent of the tweet was to stand up for the men and women of NASCAR and the fans.
One of the president's biggest congressional allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, defended Wallace and NASCAR in an interview with Fox News Radio.
I don't think Bubba Wallace has anything to apologize for. You saw the best in NASCAR. When there was a chance that it was a threat against Bubba Wallace, they all rallied to Bubba's side.
This latest controversy comes after protesters targeted several statues over the weekend, including a Christopher Columbus statue in Baltimore, Maryland, which was toppled and thrown into the city's inner harbor.
President Trump bashed the tearing down of monuments in 2 Independence Day speeches over the weekend. He also signed an executive order Friday to create a monuments garden.
The National Garden of American Heroes will be a vast outdoor park that will feature the statues of the greatest Americans who have ever lived.
The order lists several names of prominent people to be considered, including freed slave Frederick Douglass, who became a staunch abolitionist. A statue honoring Douglass in Rochester, New York, was vandalized over the weekend in what some say could be retaliation to the removal of Confederate monuments.
And Natalie Brand joins us now from the White House. Natalie, I want to start with the president's tweets Monday. Have NASCAR or Bubba Wallace responded to the president suggesting that Wallace should apologize?
We have 2 new statements from both NASCAR and Bubba Wallace in his own words. Let's start with NASCAR's statement Monday afternoon, saying very clearly that they are proud to have Wallace in the NASCAR family and commend his courage and leadership. The statement goes on to state NASCAR continues to stand tall with Bubba, our competitors, and everyone who makes our sport welcoming and inclusive for all racing fans. Shortly after that, Wallace put out a tweet with a message, he said, advice for the next generation with the hashtag #LoveWins. This is a lengthy statement from Wallace, but at the end he sums it up by saying, in part, always deal with the hate being thrown at you with love. Love over hate every day. Love should come naturally as people are, quote, taught to hate, even when it's hate from the POTUS, end quote. Now, we have reached out to the White House for an updated statement following Wallace's tweet. But during the press conference today, we heard the press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, grilled repeatedly by reporters about why the president made those controversial comments over Twitter, why they think that why the president thinks Wallace should have to apologize, and also his reference to the Confederate flag, which has been banned now from NASCAR. And McEnany couldn't really give a clear, direct answer other than to say the president says he will not rush to judgment one way or another, and that he doesn't want the same to be said for NASCAR fans. He doesn't want all NASCAR fans painted with the same brush or painted as racist. She went on to talk about what they're calling cancel culture and the White House's new fight against that, which we are hearing in recent speeches of the president and also in these White House press briefings of late. Elaine.
So speaking of which, President Trump used what's been described as divisive language in his speeches this past weekend during a holiday that celebrates national unity. Talk to us about the significance of his rhetoric, given the nationwide fight for racial equality. To whom, Natalie, is he reaching out in these speeches?
Well, Elaine, I think it's quite clear that, again, the president continues to speak primarily to his base. And if you talk to campaign officials or try to get inside the mindset of the Trump re-election campaign, they believe that when the president speaks about preserving American heritage and history and protecting these monuments and statues, that is unifying, even though we know that a lot of demonstrators and critics of the president want a larger conversation about racial injustice and the meaning of some of the controversial statues and Confederate statues. But I think what's really telling is a quote that a campaign advisor, Jason Miller, gave to the Wall Street Journal, which was then retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. He said, in part, "The reality is that most folks in Washington, D.C. corridor are incapable of grasping the growing backlash against the, quote, cancel culture movement." So clearly from that statement, the campaign believes that there are more individuals that might actually agree with the president. This kind of reminds me of when you heard the term silent majority in 2016. So some of these themes and this talk, this new fight to preserve American history and also bring law and order, it seems that the president and the campaign believes that that will be part of what they believed to be a strong re-election effort, as this is now front and center in the national dialogue.
We'll see how those themes resonate here. On another topic, Natalie, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo accused President Trump Monday of, quote, enabling the virus. How is the White House responding to the latest surge in cases, and are there any plans to address it with further legislation?
Well, this references some comments that the president made during his speech on Saturday, in which he said for most people the virus is harmless. In most cases, he said something to that effect. And he's reemphasized today on Twitter his point that the death rate in the U.S. is now down. That's something that his chief of staff also reiterated this morning, and his press secretary during today's briefing. But they also had to do some damage control and say the president was not downplaying deaths that have occurred in the U.S., but simply pointing out that the risk to most Americans is low. The death rate has gone down. However, state and local officials and health experts worry that that trend could change, given the surge that we're seeing in a number of states across the nation. And they believe as these rising case numbers, in some states significantly surging case numbers, lead to more hospitalizations, we could have a much more dire picture, especially as some of the serious complications from COVID tend to lag beyond that, initial positive test result. So the health experts, local and state leaders clearly concerned. I mean, we've seen what happened just today in the Miami-Dade area, where you have the mayor and local officials there having to roll back now some of their reopening measures and say that gyms as of midweek will start to close again, and indoor dining. So we are seeing what some would call a disconnect from comments by the president and what's happening on the ground in some of these cities where it is a very serious situation that a lot of folks are worried about.
Right. Some of the rhetoric would appear to be at odds with the reality that some of these communities are facing. Meantime, Natalie, the Trump campaign will be holding its next rally in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Why New Hampshire, and what measures will the campaign be taking to ensure the safety of those who attend?
Well, this continues. I mean, we've seen the president do quite a bit of travel, whether it's in his official capacity or, in this case, a campaign event. We've seen him hit the road to key states and try to rally his supporters with just months to go now until the general election. We have noticed a shift in some of the safety measures that will be taken at this next rally this weekend in New Hampshire. The campaign telling our political unit that temperatures will be taken, that masks will be available and encouraged, as well as hand sanitizer. And that's a slight difference from past events where masks may have been passed out by organizers. I'm thinking of that event not too long ago in Phoenix, Arizona, where masks were passed out to those who might want them, but we saw hardly anyone actually wearing the masks, and it didn't seem like that was a clear message stressing the importance of that. And since that time, just a few weeks ago, we've heard from a lot of even Republican leaders in Congress who have stressed the importance of wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. That's something that the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has been stressing repeatedly again today when he's at home in district in Kentucky, in his home state. And so, again, we are hearing clearly from leaders across both sides of the aisle that these are important safety precautions to take. Yet at some of these campaign events, we were not seeing them put into action. We'll have to see if a slight tone in or change in the messaging means that more people at that New Hampshire event will wear masks. The location is also at an airport hangar, so it's kind of more of an indoor-outdoor venue. And this also comes, Elaine, as additional campaign figures and officials have tested positive for COVID-19. Last week, we learned that Herman Cain was hospitalized in the Atlanta area 9 days after attending the Tulsa, Oklahoma rally. And there's that photograph of him without a mask. It's not known where he contracted the virus, but again, it came after the Tulsa rally. And then late Friday night, we learned that campaign official and girlfriend of Donald Trump Jr., Kimberly Guilfoyle, tested positive for COVID-19 after she had traveled to South Dakota for the Mount Rushmore event.
Right, really underscores just how contagious this virus is. Natalie Brand for us. Natalie, always great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.